So today we are going to be looking at the lap joint, a simple carcass construction joint commonly used in drawers, shelves, bookcases, anything which needs a 90-degree corner. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So the good news is that this joint is actually really straightforward, as we only need to work on one side of the joint. Now I've already taken off the waste wood on this, so this end is perfectly square here. So we're going to measure in the width of the wood that we are going to house into this joint. So in my case, we're going to mark 12mm, because that is the thickness of the wood we're working with. Take our tri-square, we'll square this across. Mark down the sides. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mark the thickness of the wood that we are going to take off of this. We're going to need our marking gauge in order to do this, and we're going to set this up to 6mm, as this is halfway down our wood. Half 12 is 6. And mark halfway there. Take that along the end as well. Make sure it's nice and visible. I'll do the same on this side. Take our pencil along the line just so we can see what we're doing. And at this point here, we're actually ready to cut already. So just as we have done before, we're going to set up a fence in order to guide our saw to exactly where we want to cut. We're making sure that we're covering up that pencil line there. It's only just barely visible, so we're cutting right on where we want to. Lean up against the fence. And we're going to cut down to our halfway marks that we made earlier. Yep. And once you're sure both sides are down to the right height, that's us done with that. So once we've finished cutting our shoulder line here, the next thing we need to do is remove this piece of wood. Easiest way for us to do this, seeing as this is a fairly thin piece of wood, is just to work in with a chisel. So with your chisel flat side up and a mallet, we can just chip away the worst of the wood. Taking it down in little bits, so took a fair bit off there, so I'll take slightly less this time. You do not want to go below the line that we marked out earlier. Okay, I'm taking it close to the line, but I'm not actually on the line. Okay, I'm just about maybe as much as a millimetre, half a millimetre above it. Last little bit. Okay, and now we need to get this down to the final size. Now, we could use our chisel and work across the way, following this line here to make sure that we're exactly where we want to be. But there's another tool we can use to give us exactly the result we want. So as I just mentioned, we could use our chisel to work our way across this line here, just shaving off the worst of the high bits, working into the middle, and come back the other way and do the same job again until that's nice and flat and level. But seeing as we already have a nice flat level surface here, we can use a different tool to reference off this and give us exactly the same down here, the granny's tooth. So what we're going to do is firstly adjust how deep this tooth at the bottom here is sticking out, so that it's only just taking the tops of the little bumps that are left off, and then we're going to incrementally move it down the way until we're at the right size. You'll notice that I've got another piece of wood here which is the same thickness as this piece, just to stop me accidentally dipping down on one side and shaving this off at an angle. So that should stay nice and level the whole way through. So let's get going with this. At the moment we're not cutting anything there just now, so if we undo the thumb screw at the back, Give that a wee half turn, tighten that thumb screw back up. Right, we're just digging into the highest of high spots there. Okay, that's getting kind of close to the edge of the wood here, so I'm going to flip this around. We'll come back the other way. Now I want to work in from the sides to the middle rather than working off the sides for the exact same reason as we would do when we're using the chisel. If I go off the edge of the wood there, I run the risk of splitting this, whereas if I work in the way, it's always supported against something. That feels nice and level now. As a quick depth check, we've got maybe a ½ mm to take off there. So, loosen up the thumb screw at the back, give this just a quarter turn, just a little bit, and tighten it back up again. Let's go once more. Again, we're just taking the tiniest little bit off here. Flip it around, come back the other way. Still a little bit low on this side, a little bit high on this side. So, once again, loosen the thumb screw at the back, little turn, tighten that back up. Okay, that's looking good from that direction. Let's come back this way. Right, now that is level the entire way across now. So at this stage, all of the hard work is done, as we've got a nice level surface here to glue with, all of our waste wood's taken away, everything's nice and neat and tidy, and our side bit of wood here fits in nicely to our space. So all is left to do is to add a little bit of glue, and this joint is done. So let's add just a little bit of glue into this joint here. We don't need loads, just enough to cover the surfaces. Let's get spread that out a bit. Making sure to get some on the back wall there as well. And just as I've said, we don't need loads of glue here, we just need enough to cover the surfaces. So, let's place our other piece of wood in place. The last thing we need to do is clamp this up. Now I can't quite clamp it to my desk, so I'm going to have to clamp it side on, but I've already prepared a couple of clamps to almost the right size, so I can hold this thing while it dries. Now I don't need to over tighten this here, just enough to hold it in place so it's not going to go anywhere is all we really need. At this stage here, what I can do is I can go and take my tri-square, is double check that this is sitting exactly the way I want it to be, and that is nice and square. I'm happy with that. I'll go and I'll get my other clamp. And again, this doesn't need to be cranked all the way up, just finger tight. Enough to hold it steady while it dries. And that is our joint just about done. So we've left this for a few hours now, so this should be dry enough to take out the clamps. So let's just break them off. And there we have it, our finished lap joint.